Hi everybody, my name is Sam Buckingham. Thank you so much for joining me. Now, at the point of recording, we are in the back end of December, prime time in the season of giving. And as they say, charity begins at home. So I've got myself 4 awesome little gifts right here. Now, you've probably heard of blind date with a book. It's an awesome idea where a book is covered up so all your preconceptions are taken away. You can't really judge it the way you would usually judge any other book. Instead, you're given a very small little bit of blurb written by the person who packaged up the book, and that is all you have to go on. Is this the kind of thing that you're likely to want to read? Now, these are kind of special for me because they were put together by people I work with. Now, I don't know specifically who, but I know the general team that they're in, so that makes it slightly more interesting. I was also particularly interested when I saw the books laid out because it was quite clear what some of those books were. For example, there was a really thin book that was described as a portrayal of grief. I was like, that's going to be Max Porter's Grief is the Thing with Feathers. And I thought whoever picked that has pretty good taste. I wonder what else they're going to have chosen. Now, I think I've opted for quite an eclectic bunch of books because the descriptions were all very different. Not always the kind of things that I would read, but things that grab my attention and I think could be interesting to look at. Now, I do think blind date with a book is an awesome idea and a great way to pick yourself up a little treat and add in that element of surprise. Now, there are loads of places that offer this. I've seen some great independent bookstores, some of the big bookstores, and there's people on Etsy, things like that. It's really easy. If you just jump on Google, do a search, I'm sure you'll find something interesting to look at. But anyway, that's enough talk. Let's see what we've got. The first book, packaged here quite nicely with a little ribbon on the front. This is described as a psychological thriller, a suspicious death, gripping narrative with unexpected twists. Now, I chose this one because I had no idea what it was. I did not pick it up and instantly know the book it was, and I felt like this could be interesting, so we're going to crack it open. Now, can I just slide this ribbon off? I can. Ribbon's off. Right, so tearing it open. Right, dark black rear. Oh, I don't know this book at all. We've got Ask No Questions by Claire Allen. Now the description on the front, Ask No Questions, not everyone wants to find out the truth. USA Today bestseller. Let's check out the blurb on the back. Some secrets are best kept hidden. 25 years ago on Halloween night, 8-year-old Kelly Doherty went missing out trick-or-treating with friends. Her body was found 3 days later on the banks of the Cregan Reservoir by 2 of her young classmates. It was a crime that rocked Derry to the core. Journalist Ingrid Devlin is investigating, but someone doesn't want her to know the truth. As she digs further, Ingrid starts to realise the Doherty family are not as they seem. But will she expose what really happened that night before it's too late? I'm certainly going to give that a go. On to number 2. Now, this one was really interesting. Japanese novella. I've read and enjoyed a lot of Japanese books lately, but the blurb says it explores the relationships between humans and cats. Gentle contemplative story with nature themes. Now, quite interestingly, a large number of books set out on this table seem to cover some sort of relationship with cats. I assume they're probably all bought by the same person and they have a particular interest in cats. Personally, I've got a dog, but I do love a Japanese novella. This was a fairly short book, so I can get through it quite quickly and get an idea what it's about. And what the hell, we'll tick off one book about cats. Now let me open it up. Right, tearing it in. Careful not to rip the main book as it feels quite thin. Right, so we have The Guest Cat by Takashi Hiraide. Right, descriptions on the back. Careful, elegant and lovely, unusually intimate, detailed and vivid. That's from the New York Times. The Huffington Post says lyrical and captivating. I will revisit The Guest Cat with pleasure, much as I return to favourite poems, paintings and memories. A couple in their 30s live in a small rented cottage in a quiet part of Tokyo. They work at home as freelance writers. They no longer have very much to say to one another. One day, a cat invites itself into their small kitchen. She is a beautiful creature. She leaves, but the next day she comes again, then again and again. New small joys accompany the cat. The days have more light and more colour. Life suddenly seems to have more promise for the husband and wife. They go walking together, talk and share stories of the cat and its little ways. I've never read anything by this author, but as I say, I've really been enjoying works from Japan lately, so that could be another one to add to the list. Which brings us to number 3. Now this one is again quite a big change from what we've just seen. This is a Cold War espionage novel. Intricate plot twists, double crossings and moral ambiguity. Themes of betrayal, sacrifice and espionage. Interesting. I don't often read spy books, but that does sound like it could work quite well. It could bring a bit of contrast to the other books. Let's tear it open, see what we've got. Oh, I like the front cover. Ah, John le Carré. Now, I am aware of John le Carré. That's the first name that probably jumps to mind when you think of spy fiction. Or maybe Ian Fleming, but John le Carré is certainly up there. You've undoubtedly heard of Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy. This looks interesting. I really like that front cover, that kind of bent and broken bicycle. It looks like it's been in some sort of crash. There's a bit of blood on the scene. It all looks very interesting. Now there's a little quote from Graham Greene here, another fantastic author. "The best spy story I have ever read." That's high praise. John Banville describes it as a masterpiece, the best espionage novel ever written. Okay, right, so here's a bit of the plot. Alec Lemus is tired. It's the 1960s, he's been out in the Cold War for years, spying in the shadow of the Berlin Wall for his British masters. Now, Control wants to bring him in at last, but only after one final assignment. He must travel deep into the heart of communist Germany and betray his country, a job that he will do with unusual cynical professionalism. Right, the last one, again, very different to what we've seen in the other books. A graphic novel of short stories. Themes of identity, loss and the human condition. Diverse with humour and poignancy. That sounds really interesting. Now, if you've seen some of my other videos, you'll know that I do like to read a graphic novel every now and then. It's something I always come back to time after time. I've got quite a big collection and I really do enjoy them. And I also have to say that recently, I've really been enjoying short stories. I think that's driven by the fact that I'm needing to tell my daughter stories when I put her to sleep at night, and it helps get in that mindset of thinking along the short story lines when you read what someone else has written. So this could be really good for me. It feels like nice, good quality, hardbound. Let's tear it open and see. Oh yeah, looks nice. Ah, fantastic. Right, so I've never come across this before. This is called Killing and Dying by Adrian Tomine or Tomine. Wired say one of the most gifted graphic novelists of our time. AV Club say it's heart-wrenching, immersive, constantly a sterling example of how to use graphic storytelling to delve into the finer points of the human condition. It's got a kind of retro simplicity to the look of it. It could be very interesting. With Killing and Dying, Tomine presented 6 new stories unlike any he has told before. Unpredictable, darkly funny and deeply moving. They display an exceptional range of focus and technique. The Village Voice called Tomine one of the most masterful cartoonists of his generation. There's no real plot breakdown on either the front or back inserts, so I'm really going to have to check this one out to see what it's about. But I am quite happy with that. I think we've got 4 books there that each bring something different to the table. At this point, I think there's only one thing to do. I need to take a pause, go away, get these read, come back and tell you what I found. I'll see you in a week or 2. Hi everyone, I am back. It is now post-Christmas, it's the new year and I have read all of the books. And you know what? I've really enjoyed them and I've got some thoughts. Now let's kick off with Ask No Questions by Claire Allen. Now this one surprised me because if I'm honest, I thought this would be the book I would enjoy least from this list of books. But I really enjoyed it. This was a riveting psychological thriller that intricately weaves a past and present narrative all set through the perspective of someone living in the present. It's set against the gritty backdrop of Derry, Ireland, and the story centres around a journalist called Ingrid Devlin who investigates a childhood killing. In fact, a girl that she grew up with was killed while she was younger, and now at the anniversary of that killing, she wants to find out exactly what happened. Now that does sound like your average thriller, but this one did have a bit more to it. It felt very dark and very engaging. There were a few points where I got a bit frustrated because I thought the author was leaving a few too many crumbs that were pointing the way towards certain twists taking place, and I hoped that wouldn't be the outcome. And in fact, I was happy to know when it came to the end of the book that they weren't the twists that eventually took place, and I found the ending quite satisfying. Allen creates a world of richly layered characters, each cloaked in mystery and with hidden motives that blur the line between victim and perpetrator. Now there were a couple of points where I had to go quite far in the suspension of disbelief because I felt the protagonist's actions were just so unbelievable. But by the end of the book, I did feel it became a quite convincing and plausible story, and I enjoyed the enigmatic characters and the tense environments. If you do like a thriller, then check this one out. Next up, we will discuss The Guest Cat. Now this was actually my final book of the year, and it was the novel that helped me reach my 100 books in a year target. And I actually read it by torchlight in car on the route to my New Year's Eve party, so bonus points for the kind of special feeling I got at the end when I finished this book. But I really enjoyed it. This book had that same feeling that lots of the Japanese novels I've read lately have. They do this kind of subtle, elegant thing really well, and this book is a great example of it. The story revolves around a couple and a cat called Chibi, who doesn't belong to them but begins visiting their small rental property. This simple premise quickly evolves into a deeper meditation on the ideas of ownership, belonging, and the ephemeral nature of relationships. The writing is both meditative and poignant. It really focuses on the little details in a poetic way. It's only short, and I think that goes in its favour because there's not really enough here to lock you in for days, but it is a very pleasant short experience. If you're looking for a quick read that will bring you that kind of atmospheric experience, then this is a great one to check out. Next up, we will discuss Killing and Dying. Now, this was decent. This is a collection of 6 short stories in one graphic novel, and I really did enjoy it. The stories narrate the nuanced struggles and subtle joys of life, and they do it in a really interesting way. The title story, Killing and Dying, particularly stood out for me. That was the story of a young teenage girl with a strong stutter but comedic aspirations to perform on stage. Now that was set against the backdrop of her mother's silent battle with cancer. The visual storytelling here was subtle but very powerful, showcasing Tomein's skill in capturing the unspoken grief and love in a family. Lots of the story is told in the little details that you could easily miss in the pictures as you quickly scan to the next. Things like the introduction of a headscarf on the mother's head to indicate that there might be a condition that started since the last frame. My second most enjoyed was Horticulture, about a gardener with a newfound passion for artistry that fails to capture the interest of those around him. It was really well written. They are stylistically diverse, with each story having its own writing style and drawing style, but it's all tied together by hallmarks that show it's all Tomein's work. Things like the pastel colours that feature throughout, or the minimalist but expressionful drawing style of the characters. He masterfully captures subtlety in human emotion in a medium that's not really built for that kind of thing. Interestingly, if the guest cat from previous on this list was to be drawn as a comic, it would have fit perfectly in this collection. Anyway, if you want a graphic novel that won't get stuck on the old tropes of superheroes and action, then this could be a great one for you to check out. So that brings me to my final book, The Spy Who Came In From the Cold by John le Carré. Now this book constantly kept me on edge, as I was never quite sure where I stood with the narrative or the protagonist's true intentions. This is your kind of classic spy novel, set against the backdrop of the Cold War. The prose is exactly what you'd expect with that kind of novel written in the 60s. It's very clinical, very precise, and the dialogue comes out very professional. It's exactly how you'd expect someone in that kind of role to speak. And I think that helps a lot in building that experience and setting the kind of mood you get throughout this book. The ambiguity I mentioned is a constant theme. You're never sure with any of the characters where they actually stand, whether they're good or evil, whether they're the master or the puppet. The ending, whilst brilliantly conceived and resonating with the novel's bleak portrayal of spy life, did leave me feeling a bit unfulfilled. I really need that nice, clean finish where everything comes together. And this kind of left me stuck in the midst of that moral and emotional fog that le Carré so expertly generates. If you've never read a spy novel, then this could be the perfect one to start. It felt detailed and well crafted without being unapproachable. So there you go, I've really enjoyed that. If you get the opportunity to go on a blind date with a book, then I recommend you do, particularly if it's a cultivated list and not just a shop trying to sell off some old stock. As someone who often flies in the face of proverbs and buys a book just because I like the cover, then this was a great way of buying just because I liked the themes. I doubt it will be the last time I go on a blind date with a book, and I recommend you do the same. Now, if you've enjoyed this video, a like would be appreciated, and a sub to the channel would be amazing. I'd love to see you next time. Thank you very much. Goodbye.